We're live. We're back. You thought you could get rid of us. You can't. Been a while, guys, since we did a stream, but tonight is a huge night because this is the night where you guys are going to, catch live reactions of how absolutely frustrated probably Larry and I will be when both of our teams make their draft decisions.
True.
How excited are we?
Well, let's first start off. How excited are you that you no longer have to cover this potential draft prospect group? Because there's nobody who's been grinding harder than you for the last, what feels like 7 years on this group.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Here's the thing. Let's not get ahead of ourselves because I have a few appearances after this talking about post-draft stuff.
Oh, good.
So maybe like next.
Is it too early to look forward at next year? Who's going number one next year?
Next. So
you're
next
you're so 2020. I care about next year's draft.
Well, guess already started working on the number one prospects, Cade Cunningham's video. Did the art for it, so I got that far. Watched some film, broke some stuff down. So that'll actually be out pretty soon. Not trying to overwhelm. Do want to get the post-draft stuff, but at least I have been able to move on a little bit from this draft because honestly, like this draft is not the best. It's not the best. It's not the worst.
That's kind.
It's not the worst, so that's nice. But it's not the best.
The draft's funny.
She's
got a great personality.
She's the one you want to marry. I don't know.
She's great. She's fine.
She's fine.
I like this draft plenty.
It's always that's always the girl that you want to bring home to your family. But let's take this analogy a step further because we can go right into LaMelo
2022.
Well, I'm saying we can take this kind of analogy a little bit further and we can just get this out of the way while we're talking about different girls and types of girls. LaMelo Ball is the girl that is so much fun to be with, right? You think of the highs. They're so high. She's great where it counts. Super hot. And then you realize, because this girl broke up with you, obviously, and caused a tremendous amount of heartbreak. That's where we're at with that. And you start thinking of only the good times and how hot she is, and it's great. But then you start thinking, man, well, was she great? Because I think she got a little too drunk at that family dinner. I didn't like how she was texting other people while we were together. That's LaMelo Ball. Those 30-foot, 8 seconds into the shot clock shots, that's like LaMelo to a T. So keeping with the girl analogy, that's where we're at and where I'm at with LaMelo Ball. And I learned today that we share the same birthday. So I've resigned myself to the fact that somehow the Bulls are going to end up with LaMelo. I know you've been talking about LaMelo for years, saying that this is the inevitability of when he was a second-round pick. You, for years, were saying this is the inevitability. There's no way that was happening.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like I nailed this. I mean, when LaMelo was first, when Lonzo was drafted, the next thing coming is LaMelo going to be an NBA player, and I was all in that he's going to be an NBA player. I just hope it isn't for my team. So I think that he's already posting pictures of his fit. Like
I missed
that. These are the examples of why I don't want LaMelo Ball. Like I want that grinded out dude, and LaMelo just doesn't seem like the guy for me. So I hope nothing but the best career for him. But LaMelo Ball, again, the Knicks need a point guard. He's the number one rated point guard in this draft. I don't want the Knicks to. For the love of God, please don't fall for the Knicks. I just don't see it. I don't see the work. I don't see these guys ever played a meaningful basketball game in his life. I don't see he seems like a perfect guy that might have a high ceiling that the Knicks won't tap into.
Yeah, LaMelo is certainly interesting from your perspective because I think with the Knicks falling back and not moving up, I think they're completely out of the race for him. Now, the Knicks made the move. They did trade for the 23rd pick.
Yeah.
They traded the 27th and the 38th for the 23rd. Some people are saying, oh, maybe they're going to try to use the 8 and the 23rd to move up from 8, which I could see, but I don't think Melo's the guy that they're going to
They seem to really be all in on Obi Toppin as the rumors and everything like that seem to be, and which I'd be stoked if that's a thing that we can pull off. So I mean, I love his game. He's straight buckets. It fits for the Knicks in regards to Mitch. I know Knicks already had preliminary talks to get the 5, I believe, with the Hawks, and according to my sources, which are Twitter, they say that that the Hawks still want more. So yeah, in that regard, I really hope there's a chance that he falls to the Knicks, and I would love to get him. I think Obi Toppin is a great scorer. I think the defense can possibly get there. We'll see.
Yeah, so honestly, I don't think a lot of Knicks fans on Twitter share your sentiments. Most of Knicks Twitter seems to be out on Obi because, one, he's 22. So obviously 22-year-olds are, they're
this is by far the dumbest thing. This age argument that everybody goes into year after year of the draft is by far the dumbest thing. Because in my opinion, so if you draft someone who's 19, you're going to have your certain phenomenons, like LeBron. There's no LeBron in this draft. Okay, get past that. So you're going to have your certain guys that when they're 19, they're going to be absolutely dominant. Besides that, if you take a 19-year-old with the idea that it's going to take 2 years to develop realistically, that's just a realistic outlook, you have now spent 2 years in regards to his rookie salary scale developing a guy. So by the time this guy is a good player, he's now up for a contract.
Right.
The logic makes no sense. I'd rather have the guy, I'm not saying I want to draft a 28-year-old, but if a kid's 21, 22 and can develop faster into between his body and as well his game, I don't see why that's a negative. I don't get it.
It's not. I personally don't think it's a negative. You have your guys like Dame. Dame was a 22-year-old. He played in a poor conference in relation to like the Dukes of the world. But he was a guy who came in ready. He came in as a rookie, and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's good." Now it's obviously like when a 22-year-old is dominating college competition, there's reason to be skeptical. You think maybe this guy's body is more developed than an 18-year-old. They have more experience, so they can process the game quicker. All of that is true. But to just all of a sudden write off a prospect because they're old, it's weird. And especially with Obi, because Obi's situation is different. He is only a sophomore, old sophomore, age of a senior, but he is a guy that he grew a lot really quickly. Like it's not like he always played the position. He just has a weird trajectory. And the guy's skilled. He's just a super underrated dude. I mean, to me, the NBA game offensively, he kind of has it all. The power forward, small ball center position. He's a guy that's going to be a lob threat. He's got crazy athleticism. He's a guy who you can run pick and pop with because he could stroke it. And people are skeptical because he only shot like 2 3-pointers a game. He shot 40%, but you look at form. Like it can't always be about numbers. Sometimes you actually have to watch the film. The form checks out.
But that's not on a spreadsheet, so that doesn't mean how would you see it? You actually do research, maybe?
A little bit. The spreadsheet.
I can't just Google form.
You can. You're going to get mixed results there. But maybe that's how do I figure out how to put a spreadsheet into these videos and try to trick people? I just put one on. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. That's later stuff. But yeah, the biggest thing is he is.
If it takes more than 6 seconds, though, I'm out. I can tell you that right now.
Sure. The biggest thing for him is that he's an awesome passer.
Yeah,
great playmaker.
Yeah, he's straight buckets. I mean, he's just he's everything. He has, in my opinion, his chance to be the rookie of the year, whatever team he goes, only because his offense is he's gonna put up stats, whether it's for the first team or the second team. I feel like the Knicks selfishly are a team that need a guy like this to put up straight buckets. The Knicks fans are going to be like, great, we need a 9th power forward. I get the jokes. Moving on. This is what, we need that instant offense. He fits next to Mitch. I like it. I'm in. I hope the Knicks find a way to pull it off without sacrificing too much.
He fits really well with Mitch.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's great with Mitch. I don't get that logic. The argument's going to be, or the joke's going to be, we have 9 power forwards. I get it. None of these power forwards are going to be here past next year. Okay, let's move on from that joke. Now, us developing moving forward, I think it's great. We need, if we can get Obi Toppin, we have Mitch, we have RJ Barrett, we need a point guard. That's really what it is. We need an orchestrator of the offense, maybe a little bit of just somebody who can just orchestrate an offense and hit a three. That's really it, and that's a good way or a good start to building some version of a foundation.
Yeah, and you're going to have point guard options on the board. If they don't go with Obi, they'll have their point guard options if they want that. But yeah, with Obi, you do want a good point guard. With Mitch, you do want a good point guard. Let's talk about some of these point guard options. What's crazy about this draft, the Bulls are at 4, Knicks are at 8. You have Atlanta at 6, Cleveland at 5, Detroit.
Yeah, since you've looked at this so many times, can you rattle off like 20?
I probably could. I probably could. But the thing is, like once you get to 4, the draft flattens out. Like I do think that there are certain prospects at the 4, 5, 6 range that are better than the 7, 8, 9. But you can make arguments for once you get to 4 until you get to like 12.
So
everybody's in the same tier. You can make that argument. So a lot of the players that the Knicks are looking at, the Pistons are looking at, the Bulls are looking at, the Spurs are looking at. All of these guys can go in any sense of direction because the draft is it just flattens. Like, and you can make arguments that a lot of these guys are going to be better, have more potential than the top 3 guys, which we'll get to with those guys in a minute. But the only reason that those 3 guys are in a tier of their own is just because they have like physical gifts or just natural abilities.
Well, you're including Edwards, Wiseman, and LaMelo in the top 3, right? Yeah. That's what you're saying?
Their ceiling is higher than some of these other guys.
Right. So that is the common 3, but you always do need to specify because so many boards have LaMelo everywhere. And, if we're basing it off top 3 versus what we think teams will draft, the top 3 doesn't always seem to work out that way. I mean, there's a lot of Warriors to Denny, which gives a lot of rumors and everything like that. I mean, Warriors kind of been linked to everybody at this point, but those top 3, I don't think it'd be surprising if that's not the top 3 that go in whatever order.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can easily see Denny slide in there. Okongwu's been, he's been mocked in there a little bit. There's some reports that he has some kind of foot injury. Some people say it's bad where he'll miss some time in the regular season. Other people say it won't really matter. It's not going to hurt his stock. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Obi Toppin could definitely go in the top 3. Like because here's the thing with a guy like Obi, a guy like Denny. Denny, even though he's 19, he has professional experience for years. Right. He's not Luka by any stretch, but he's been playing with professional basketball players for a really long time. So between him and Obi, who Obi is a little older, a little more ready to go right away, with the NBA schedule next year, if they do the regional thing where you're playing, your division a lot, you're doing back-to-backs more often, those guys are going to benefit from that because they're going to be ready to, handle when the scouting report now focuses on them in game 2. Typically, the scouting report comes out. You're probably not going to be heavily featured as a rookie, but in this specific season where things are going to move fast, teams are going to be like, all right, Tyrese Halliburton hit 4 threes on us in the first game. We got him on a back-to-back. We can't, now we have to force him to, drive to the paint. We got to keep him going. We got to push him left. We have to weak him. We have to do all these things that wouldn't necessarily happen as quick because, in a normal season, you wouldn't have as many back-to-backs. So I think that's going to be this.
You got to factor in too. I think these guys might get more playing time than normal as well, because I would imagine we're going to get more rest, right?
Yeah, probably. If games are moving quicker, then yeah, I mean, guys rest in a normal circumstance. We had guys resting in the bubble, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. The only, I guess my only counter in that regard is that most teams who rest are going to be good players, teams with good players that rest. So, realistically, that's not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spot. Granted, you get the Warriors in there.
We have some breaking news.
Oh, shit.
The Philadelphia 76ers are trading Al Horford and a first and second round pick to the Thunder for Danny Green.
Okay, it's a good fit. I mean, I guess that they're considering Al Horford a salary dump in that regard as well.
Yeah, I mean, for the Thunder, it's easy to take that salary. Who do they're not trying to sign anybody?
No, I think it's a great salary fill for them. They get more picks. again, we can have a full-blown conversation one day in regards to OKC's style of the process of what they're trying to do.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, they need – if Danny Green has anything left in the tank, it's great for Philly if they can.
Yeah, I mean, look, Danny Green obviously didn't shoot it great in the bubble and whatnot, but the dude could still play. Like, just because he had one off, shooting year.
I mean, I guess with that, so that makes me – so there's been a lot of rumors with – 76ers and the Bulls all day today for Zach LaVine. So I assume that takes them out of that LaVine hunt, and it's probably because the Bulls didn't want Horford. That's kind of what I get out of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that. I mean, they've clearly been trying to get some kind of shooting from the guard spot. I've heard that they've been going hard after Bradley Beal. They've been going hard after Zach LaVine. Obviously, I feel like Danny Green is a concession there.
Yeah.
But Danny Green fits great with them. They need a guy who can knock down shots, and I still have confidence in Danny Green to knock down shots. Maybe it's the Long Island bias that we got. But
love Danny, but Danny he still defend. He's not a bad defender. So they need to space that. They really need to space that floor out. That's a big problem with them over in Philly, and obviously Daryl's going to want to shoot more threes. That's not going to be a secret. So they're going to It's a 2-for-1 trade. Getting rid, and Daryl absolutely hates draft picks too. So if you can get rid of all those at the same time, it's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. Let's. This is maybe might be my favorite segment. I don't know. We'll see where it takes us. Let's talk. Let's get into it. Let's just talk about Anthony Edwards. Here's a guy who I had as the number 2 guy on my board because from a talent perspective, he has it all. He's got a complete offensive package. Combo moves, shoot it off the dribble, step backs, the body to get to the rim, the athleticism. When he wants to, he defends as well as any guard in the draft, moves his feet, blocks shots, big, physical, can get to the line whenever he wants. But the whole thing with him is whenever he wants, right? And you don't love, just from when the knock on the guy is, well, he can do all this stuff whenever he wants. That's not great. It's he floats in and out of games. That knock is not great, and in a draft like this, obviously, maybe you're a little bit more willing to take that risk because he is, one of the top talents in a draft where there isn't a home run Zion, Luka, Ja Morant type of guy, right? So you're more willing to take that risk with Anthony Edwards. But for a guy that is about to get drafted, and granted, I don't know how much it'll affect his stock. It's not like he's going to drop super far if he were to drop. But some of these quotes, and I mean, a little perplexed why you would want to drop this on the day of the draft.
Oh, it's nuts. I don't understand what's the outcome? Like, what are you looking for? What's your end game with this? He's talking about how much football is his passion and everything like that. Basketball is just what he does. That's what his talent is. When you're picking or when you're drafting, it's a risk no matter what you do. But to try to limit risk, you're going to want the guy who's going to love the game and is going to be grinding in the gym.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem like anything that Anthony Edwards wants to do. Now, it's not pushing it past that. I'm sure he works hard and everything like that. But you're going to tell me you're trying to draft for a 10-year veteran, someone to help you contribute to a finals team. That's the point of the draft, is figuring out players that can help you contribute to create a good team moving forward.
Right.
That's terrifying. It really is. And, it's not going to affect his stock because there's just nobody better in regards to competing with him in that circumstance.
Right.
But, you're basically picking him with the idea that he just has good stats. It's like a 2K team. This guy is getting 80, so you will take an 80. That's great. This is what I get out of him, and that you hope that the 80 will suffice on the court. But in regards to grinding, progression, getting better, everything like that, everyone says the greats add one move in offseason. Like, do you see that in the future? To me, this guy seems like Anthony Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins, yeah.
Andrew Wiggins, my bad. Andrew Wiggins.
No offense to Andrew Wiggins there. And that's one of the comps for him, and that's the scary thing about him.
Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Parker, they were the next LeBron taking over the world, and they have all the tools.
Yep.
I like their, I like what their draft, what it says about them going to the season, what they can offer to a team that I like more than Anthony Edwards. And they, this is what this seems like to me. This is what this is going to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I really tried to talk myself out of that because, for all the reasons you mentioned, that there's just nobody that, blows past you in that regard. But these, the rapping things, the football, like the fact that he seems like he would rather rap and play football than play basketball before he made any money is not great.
No.
First of all, with the rapping thing, I want to say, I feel like I read he took a shot at Dame.
Heard this.
Dame can spit. Dame's filthy. I'm sorry.
Dame's great.
Dame is when it comes to athletes who could rap, Dame can actually rap. So for him to come for Dame, like that turned me off right away.
Again, like, what is your goal? Like, to create a corny rap beef to try to up your level? Like, come on, what's the end game? Dame's respected around the league, and with every player. I can't see any player in the league saying they don't like Dame. If they don't like Dame, it's because Dame smoked him on a play. That's why. So it's like, what is your end game there in regards to try to create your look for the league? That you just look corny.
Yeah, I'm scared. If I had to redo my board, I don't know. It's hard
This seems Minnesota. It seems perfect for Minnesota.
I still think that Minnesota is going to take him ultimately because I don't see the fit with LaMelo.
Right.
Here's the thing with Melo too. Melo's kind of the same way where you're like, he definitely loves the game. He loves being in the gym, like for sure.
Yeah.
But I've heard that this dude bombed his interviews so bad that people wanted to interject during the media session to lecture him about how disinterested he was. That's what I've heard. That this kid, like, he just is too cool for school, doesn't care, basically doing that. Like, I'm here. Now, is that because all he wants to do is focus on hooping? I don't know. But it doesn't seem, from everything you hear, it's not great. Now, granted, if you watch any of his interviews previous to all of this, it's who he is. Like, he's never been a guy who can really just go in.
Well, he's never had to. I mean, that's the problem, and that's my problem with him. He's never had to. He never had to play in a meaningful game. He never had to try because he has skill. He grew. He grew in height. It really helped his outlook. But when his dad is like, yo, you don't have to go to college because, they don't want you or they're not getting the minutes, whatever the case may be. We'll just bring you overseas.
It was because he gave his son a signature shoe.
So
he wasn't allowed to go to college.
But it's little things like that. It's just like, that's not the guy that you're looking to build your franchise around for the future. It's just not.
No, I agree. Let's quickly talk about somebody who's not very popular because he's not 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan who can shoot threes, but he is the guy that I have had as the number one prospect on my board. It's James Wiseman, big man from Memphis. I think that this dude is going to be awesome. I think that he has one of the safest floors in the draft. He's a dude that if his floor, I think, is DeAndre Jordan. And his ceiling is a hell of a lot higher than that. He is a guy that nobody's really seen much tape of. He played 3 college games. You could find a few of his games from high school. He played in some all-star games. But he's a kid that is basically a mystery. And he doesn't look like the traditional guy. Like right now, everybody's looking for the next Bam at center, right? Everybody wants Bam Adebayo because Bam seems much more attainable than a guy like Jokic at center who is just completely original. And how do you duplicate that, right? So everybody wants Bam, and that's why everybody loves Onyeka Okongwu. And I think Okongwu is going to be a great player. He's super safe. But when I look at them in a comparison, I feel like I'm going back to 2004 with Dwight Howard and Emeka Okafor, where if you went into that draft most of the people in the media world, most of that you read online, that you watched on TV, would have all picked Emeka Okafor because he's coming off a national championship with my boy Ben Gordon at UConn. He averaged literally like 5 blocks a game in college. Incredible career, successful, known product. You saw what you knew what you were getting. And obviously injuries, hampered his career a little bit. So it's not entirely fair to, shit on him or whatever. But he's a dude that was just, you knew what you were getting. And then on the other hand, you have a kid from Georgia, Dwight Howard, and nobody knows anything about Dwight Howard. There's no YouTube. Maybe you saw him in the McDonald's All-American game. And the Orlando Magic have the first pick, and they take the mysterious kid that no one knows about. Go read draft grades from that night. Everybody is saying the Magic should have taken Okafor. Nobody was saying that Dwight Howard was the guy. But Dwight Howard had something that Emeka Okafor didn't have. He was a big dude with ridiculous athleticism who at one point was probably one of the top 3 players in the league. And that's the difference between, for me, with a guy like Wiseman and a guy like Okongwu. Okongwu, you know exactly what you're getting, but there's a ceiling, and he's not going to be Bam. He doesn't have the passing skills of Bam. He's not as smooth as Bam was. He's going to be a really good defender. He'll block some shots. He'll do some things. But to me, it's like he's more like Wendell Carter Jr. than he is like Bam. And there's a big level in between those players. But
it takes a lot for you to say that, but I appreciate that. And I think you're 100% right in that regard. I think that's, that's not even a negative on Wendell Carter. I think Wendell Carter's great. I just think they're 2 different players.
There's just levels. And even though there might be some similarities between Bam and Wendell Carter, there's just a level that I don't think Wendell Carter can get to that Bam has. And I think Wiseman's like that in this draft. And that's why, most people unanimously have him in the top 3, even though he's a center. But he just does things on the court that are special. He can cover so much space on the court. A lot of people don't think that he can cover guards out on switches. I watched a lot of his film. I think he can. And he's just a guy that has a lot of talents that you can't teach, that nobody is going to be able to teach him. But some of the things that, maybe are his weaknesses, you actually can teach him. He can get better, and a lot of the things that are his quote unquote weaknesses are a lot of the things that people said were Bam Adebayo's weaknesses. And I'm not trying to make a direct comparison because it's not that they're the same player. They're different players, but I think they share like a smoothness and just a natural basketball ability. And that's why I'm trying to make the comp. Now, let me read you quick Bam's weaknesses into the draft. And now there's a difference. Bam went in, 15, 16, something like that. Here are his weaknesses. Despite decent form, was not a great free throw shooter. For all his muscle, was not able to reel in many defensive rebounds. Basketball IQ is lacking, as he doesn't always respond well to double teams. Finds himself in the wrong place or misses a rotation far too much. Has not developed much of a back to the basket game. Doesn't have a go-to move. Poor assist to turnover ratio. Not strong with the ball. Leaves the ball low. Small players can smack it away. Body has likely reached its peak physically. More of an athletic specimen playing basketball than a basketball player with athletic components. That was off.
Yeah, it just sounds like I don't even understand how you get there from just limited footage.
But that was Bam's.
I get it. Yeah,
Bam had enough footage to make those, and that wasn't like a weird thought. That's what most people thought of Bam at the time. But there was something about him for me because I wanted the Bulls to draft him that year. That was a draft that I don't like to talk about. It's because it's where we traded Jimmy Butler. I actually wanted the Bulls to draft Bam and pair him with Jimmy. That just happened on a different team, so that's sad for me. Just thinking back, but there were just things that Bam did on the court, the way he moved, all these things that seemed natural to me. I see a lot of the same in Wiseman, just the way his natural ability, the way he moves, and at worst, he's a guy that to me is going to be DeAndre Jordan at his floor. Right. He's just going to be ridiculously physical. He's if all he is a rim runner who catches lobs off pick and rolls, and then he gets some offensive rebounds, then he's still going to be really valuable.
Yeah, we've seen just in this playoffs alone how valuable big men are becoming once again. I think that's huge, and I think the Warriors, if he comes to the Warriors, I think the Warriors are taking him. I don't see how they don't. It really fits. It makes so much sense. He by far, I think, has the highest ceiling of all the players here, that are available.
Mm-hmm.
But there is so much mystery because he just played limited games.
Yeah, and that's what it is. But I think that if he played a full college season, or if he came back after the 12-game suspension, whatever it was, I think he'd be the unanimous number one pick because his numbers would have been ridiculous. And,
right.
And like you said, the sample size is what's making him not that. But I think when we look back at this draft in particular, it's going to be obvious that the hype is deserved. So I think he's interesting, and he's one of the rumors for the Bulls was, Golden State was going to trade the 2 for Wendell Carter and the 4 because the Bulls want to take Wiseman. Mark Eversley, part of their new management team, worked in Philly. Maybe there's some Embiid stuff that he likes. He likes big men. I don't know. Whatever the case is, I think that that's all coming from Golden State. Like, obviously, Golden State's shown interest in everybody. They're trying to make moves. Yeah. They're trying to leak everything, so they put pressure on other teams. But I think Wiseman is one of the special players in this draft.
Yeah, I really think there's a chance that 5 years from now, it makes no sense for the Wolves to grab Wiseman because they have Cat. So I get that. But I think it could be one of these things that we can look back 5 years from now and be like, oh, they passed on Wiseman and took Edwards, who's a bench player now. I think that's a possibility.
For sure. Here's the other thing. Like, with Wiseman, if he lands in Golden State, like, let's put Clay in the strong corner. And let's have Steph have the ball. And now you're running a pick and roll with Wiseman and Steph. And with Clay in the corner, so the help can't really help too far off, right? How do you guard it? I want somebody to answer how you would guard it. You would have to overhelp on the weak side.
Right.
But if you blitz Steph because you want to get the ball out of his hands, you don't want him to shoot. Wiseman's rolling hard to the hoop, and now you're getting alley-oops, lobs, all that. If Clay's man helps too far off in the corner, now Clay's open. If you're dropping low on Wiseman to stop him from getting to the rim, now Steph's gonna hit open threes. I mean, sometimes basketball is simple when you have the talent. It's just simple sometimes. The gravity that Steph and Wiseman would cause in both directions make it so difficult to guard. Yeah,
and I just think that Wiseman is the player who's most ready to be on a good team. It takes time. I think he has the least amount to develop, in my opinion, because he seems like the most athletic for his size and everything like that. So that being said, it's also Draymond insurance. I feel like if there's going to be one of these guys on Golden State who can possibly just fall off a cliff or all of a sudden just has nagging injuries, it's got to be Draymond, in my opinion. I understand Clay and Steph are both coming off injuries, but the way Draymond plays, his body, everything like that, he seems to be the closest one, in my opinion, to falling off a cliff. And now you have Wiseman in just the case.
Yeah, let's hit some comments. Shout out everybody watching live. Appreciate you guys stopping in, watching along. Lot of stuff going on. A lot of Kyra Lewis talk in the chat.
There's a lot of Kyra Lewis talks going on.
Lot of Kyra Lewis chat, which I love, because Kyra Lewis, I think I'm higher on Kyra Lewis than just about anybody else in, I don't know, maybe the world, maybe in the atmosphere of NBA basketball. I've had Kyra Lewis 5th on my draft board. The first time I watched him, I was like, I got to go see where mock drafts have this dude. And he was getting mocked anywhere from like 20 to 30-ish. And I was going, well, that's insane. Because as soon as you watch him, he looks like an NBA dude, and I get the concerns, during the college season, he was really skinny. He's a sophomore. So I guess people thought he was old, even though he last year as a freshman wasn't old enough to get drafted. So that's why he's a sophomore. He couldn't enter the draft. He was so young. He's a year younger than Cole Anthony right now. And then I said, all right, well, he's really fast. Maybe he can't shoot. And I watch him, and the dude's hitting shots off the bounce. He's doing all of these creative things. And now I'm going, what on earth is happening? Why is he dropping so low? And I put it out there. I was like, this dude is a lottery player. I don't understand how he's not a lock. And it wouldn't shock me if he went in the top 10. And I still think that. I think that he's a guy that we could look back on, and he has that potential to kind of be like, for this draft, maybe I don't want to say that he'll have the same impact as Donovan Mitchell, because Donovan Mitchell obviously has been an incredibly special player. But he might be the guy that you look at and go, why did we let him slip? Because he has very natural NBA talents. He has elite speed. You know, he has the Kobe White, the De'Aaron Fox speed that it just translates in the NBA, right? Like, that's going to translate. So what is it? Is he a bad passer? No, he's a good passer. He made my favorite pass of the entire season. Like, live dribble, left-handed swing pass through multiple defenders to the weak side wing. Unbelievable. Like, he can make really high-level reads. People say, oh, he needs to improve as a decision maker. Well, find me a guard that doesn't need to improve as a decision maker at 19 years old. Like, that is just a natural thing. He's not super turnover prone, but he's a guy that at a high usage had to create a lot of offense himself. And, you know, he sometimes would turn the ball over just because that's what happens when you have the ball in your hands a lot of times. All the great point guards turn the ball over.
I mean, look, this is going to be a weird draft. We had no March Madness or anything like that. So it's really just based off of YouTube videos and clips that people are making, you know, opinions and decisions. So this is going to be a weird draft. Yeah,
no doubt. But I think especially for the Knicks, Kyra's a guy to keep your eye on.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. I mean, we need – Knicks have been starving for this point guard. We haven't had a point guard for – it's been a long time. So we need that orchestrator, that guy that really can, you know, take the city by the balls and move it forward. So hopefully, you know, if Kyra's the guy, I'm all in.
Kyra could be the guy. You could have a guy like Killian Hayes. That could be the guy. You know, a lot of talk about Killian going one spot earlier to Detroit. You know, the one thing I'll say about Killian, I've been hearing for a long time, and I've kind of felt the same way. I think I have Killian actually 7th on my board overall. But a lot of people had him way higher. I think it started with Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer. When his board came out, he had Killian first. And I totally get it. I see why. You know, Killian is a guy that, you know, he in the highlight tapes, he looks like D'Angelo Russell. He looks like James Harden. He hits step backs. He's got smooth side steps off the bounce. Playmaker, 6'5", big, played professionally. I get it all. To me, the James Harden and D'Angelo Russell comps, they never really made sense. To me, he was always more Goran Dragic. And Goran Dragic is obviously an incredibly good player. This dude just showed in this playoff series how big of an impact he can have on winning. And him getting injured in the finals was, you know, obviously a huge problem for Miami. Killian, I think, has a lot of that to his game. The difference is that Goran Dragic is like super fiery and intense, where Killian Hayes is a little bit more reserved. Now, maybe that's because he's younger. He's playing in a pro league. He's not necessarily the leader. But Dragic, even as a young player, always had that fire that I don't necessarily see in Killian. But around the 7-8 range, I do think Killian is good value. Now, I think there's a chance that he could drop below that a little bit. You know, NBA teams don't like him as much as people do on the internet. At least that's the feedback that I've been getting, because NBA teams have actually watched his full games. As somebody who has also watched a ton of his full games, he's a guy that has obvious weaknesses. He can't finish around the hoop against length. He doesn't have the same natural touch. Like, at 6'5", he's below the rim. So being below the rim and not having the natural touch, you know, against length, it's going to be really hard for him to finish, right?
That just sounds like Dennis Smith Jr. to me.
Well, Dennis Smith Jr. is above the rim, but no, Killian, he's just a guy that, like, he's not going to have those Kyrie finishes off the glass, you know. But
that's a nice way of putting it.
Well, you know, but he does have plus skills. Like, he's a really good passer at the pick and roll. He's got a really good body that's going to grow. And
he's not going to dunk from the free throw line.
He's certainly not going to ever dunk from the free throw line. I don't think he's going to dunk in game very much. Sure. And at 6'5", that's, you know, kind of weird. But he's a guy that like, if you're not expecting him to be your savior and you're just like, hey, this guy's going to be a decent to good point guard who, like, if things go right, can make an all-star team, I think you're going to be really happy with him. If you're going to come in and expect him to be James Harden or D'Angelo Russell, I think you're going to be really upset. Now, maybe D'Angelo Russell is not that high a bar to reach. I mean, D'Angelo Russell hasn't really proven that he can impact winning very much this far in his career. So
yeah, that's a wide player comp, so I agree with you in that regard.
But and I'm sure a lot of people would argue that Dragic has always been better than D'Angelo Russell, but just in play style. He's much more of that. So that's another guy that is going to go around that range that, you know, it wouldn't shock me if the Knicks were after. But again, a lot of smoke with him to Detroit. A lot of smoke about Patrick Williams to Detroit as well. Patrick Williams is a guy, you look at his, I mean, look at that, 6'8", 225. He is just a physical monster. I mean, he is a dude. He didn't get to show off a lot in college. He really, you know, he played off the bench, limited minutes, but defensively, the dude was everywhere. Block percentage over 5, averaged a block a game off the bench. I mean, he's that prototypical 6'8" guy who could, you know, he'll be able to guard every position. Like, he'll guard point guards here and there on switches and not get eaten up. He'll be able to protect the rim a little bit, but he's a guy that definitely, like, you don't know what you're getting with him because, again, it's like limited sample. Like, he played a lot of the games, but he had a role that didn't feature him at all. You know, he's not like a knockdown shooter. He shot 32% from 3. It was on low volume. It doesn't look horrible. He's got soft touch, but it's slow. You know, teams are going to go under him consistently. What you like about him is he showed the ability to hit mid-range shots off the bounce and get to his shot pretty consistently. But the problem is he's a rookie, and how many teams are going to let him get to a mid-range shot off the bounce, right? That's not a shot that NBA teams are going to let this dude take.
It sounds weird, especially with Blake. I mean, I understand Blake isn't supposed to be for the future, but they still have Blake for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they drafted Dumbayo last year. So, like, they overlap a little bit. But a lot of people like his potential. I mean, to me, I had him 14th on my board. He definitely has potential. I wouldn't be shocked if he was one of the better players in the draft because he's skilled. But he also has a lot of, like, Marvin Williams to his game.
Right.
You know, Marvin Williams. And look, Marvin Williams played in the league forever.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. I mean, he's a good player. He's around for a long time. He's
just not, like, that elite player that I think everyone was expecting him to be. I mean, you go back in that draft, part of me thinks that the Atlanta Hawks might take Chris Paul over him at that point, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, and as Scott's alluding to here, there's a lot of smoke with the Bulls at 4. I was asked on a podcast recently, like, is that a realistic situation? I was like, I can't see it. He's, you know, maybe in a trade back. And if you trade back, if you're a team who really values that kind of player, like, you could definitely picture him on the floor in a game 7 being able to guard multiple positions. But that high, that scares me. If the Bulls end up with him at 4, I'm not going to throw my computer against the wall or anything, but I'm also going to be bummed out because I think he's a guy that you trade down for. And, you know, if the Pistons are locked in on him, I know they have new management or whatever, but man, the Pistons track record over the last X amount of years has not been great as an organization developing talent. And he to me is a stay away until you get into that 10 to 14 range.
And I mean, that being said, if you drafted Marvin Williams at 14, it'd be great.
That'd be incredible.
Right.
If you drafted Marvin Williams at 7 or 8, you'd probably be happy.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
But he's a guy that does scare me. Another guy, a lot of buzz. Nobody ever has a negative thing to say about Tyrese Halliburton. You know, like, he's a guy that at point guard is, you know, a really good playmaker when he has space to get to his passes. You know, he makes great decisions with the ball. Ridiculously wonky shot. I mean, his shot is ugly. His footwork is crazy. He looks like a pencil. It looked weird coming out of his hand, but he's got a lot of Lonzo ball to his game, but in a way that I believe the shot will translate more seamlessly. But his problem is he doesn't have a good handle. And that's the biggest reason that he scares me. Like, he's not, to me, at the next level, he's not a full-time point guard. He's a 1.5. Like, he is a guy that could play off of a good point guard and a good shooting guard. Like, Golden State would have been perfect if they dropped back and you could let him kind of play off with Steph because he's tall enough to play the two. But he's also got the ball hand, like the playmaking chops to let Steph run off screens, do all that. Or you could play him with Clay, you know, in spurts, let him come off the bench, almost like a new age Sean Livingston who could shoot threes. Like, that to me would have been a great fit. And that makes you think, well, maybe Atlanta's a good fit too. And theoretically, he would be a good fit for all those same reasons in Atlanta. I've heard that a lot of teams or a lot of players' agents don't necessarily want their guys going to Atlanta. Because Trey, you know, isn't the easiest guy to play with, even though, you know, he's an incredible playmaker. That's what I've heard. But the Halliburton is a guy that, again, if you expect him to come in, be your savior, and turn your franchise around as a point guard, as a playmaker, you're going to be disappointed. But if he is a guy that will play winning basketball. He's a guy that is going to be on a lot of good teams. He just has to be a piece to the puzzle and not, you know, the main, you know, guy on your team. So that's the thing with him.
So I don't want the Knicks to draft him based off what you just said.
So here's my thing with the Knicks though. Like, with the Knicks, if you believe that RJ Barrett, like, is a guy who's going to be able to create offense in like a more high usage role and have the ball in his hands, make plays, get out in transition, do all those things, like, Halliburton's actually a good fit next to him. You just have to be confident that RJ Barrett's that guy. If you're not confident RJ Barrett's that guy, then I wouldn't take Halliburton. But
hard to go in on that.
He is a theoretically, you know, a good fit.
So, you know, we got asked where, you know, what are the Wizards doing? It sounds like a good Wizards pick, no?
Well, I mean, one, I don't know how much smoke there is to the rumors of John Wall for Westbrook. I don't know how much smoke there is there.
Who's for?
I don't know who that helps. Whatever.
You might, like, again, at this point, you know what Westbrook is. You rather ride with the great unknown, which is John Wall right now, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly agree. I mean, I know that Wall's I guess Westbrook's contract is shorter, maybe? I don't know.
I guess, but John Wall, you know, he could come back and be good. We don't know.
I mean, look, Westbrook's still good.
He's not bad. Westbrook's not bad, but do you want to? There's no scenario where I think you hand the keys over to Westbrook and your team's going to be competing for a championship. No. I know that. I feel confident about that. Now, but John Wall, in the right situation, contract aside, let's take away contracts.
Yeah,
Russ, with any composition, it's going to be really hard for this guy to be able to carry a team to the finals. Just the way he play style, you know, everything's got to go through him. Everything like that, the way he wants to play. John Wall, in the right circumstance, could be a contributing player.
Yeah,
really could. It's just the only but about John Wall is the contract. Granted, you know, injuries and everything. I get it, but you know, he can be a contributing player on a good team. It's just his contract is such a hindrance.
Right. And the other, and like you said, like, Russ is the guy. If Russ is on a team, he's the guy. He just
right. John Wall doesn't have to be the guy. John Wall can do other things.
Regardless of his contract, like, he doesn't have to be the guy. Now, yeah, he has not played well for years. It feels like he hasn't played for years. But
he hasn't played in 2 years.
But, you know, you're not, you know what you're getting, the risk factors of Westbrook. And if you're just a team who wants to, like, sell tickets, get to the playoffs, Russ can take you there. You know, he'll take you there. He'll change, you know, he'll make sure everybody plays hard. And if you basically give him the Giannis treatment, you just surround him with shooters, like, under the right circumstance, I think you can make, if like he went east, you could probably make the second round. Like, that wouldn't shock me. But I think that's pretty much your ceiling, right? Like, it's probably your ceiling. But for the Wizards, as far as the draft, I mean, a lot of Onyeka Okongwu buzz. I don't know if Okongwu will make it there. There are definitely circumstances where he will. But, you know, if I was the Wizards, you know, last year they took Rui. Rui was good. I think I would start looking at a guy like Devin Vassell from Florida State. He was the sixth pick or the sixth guy on my big board. He to me is just one of the most impressive help defenders I think I've ever scouted. He is a guy that just absolutely floored me. He's the only guy that I did a video on that I started with defense, because as a defender, he's good at everything. He guards every position. He can protect the rim. He's 6'7", rangy, just incredible anticipation. I know there was the weird video of his shot working out and it scared everybody. I totally get it, but I would not be afraid of that. He always had that weird hitch, but it was exaggerated. He's not going to shoot like that. To me, you still worry about his shot translating right away because he does have that hitch. I highlighted it in my video before there was any talk of it as something he needed to work on. I think he'll adjust to the line. It'll take him a little while, but he's just a plug and play guy. Like, he could fit literally anywhere. He's going to defend the opposing team's best player eventually, and knock shots down at a decent clip. And if he can give you anything off the bounce, and he showed flashes, I wouldn't expect it, but if he can give you anything off the bounce, he's going to be one of the better players in this draft. To me, he's very like Luol Deng, very Tayshaun Prince, just a guy that you could fit anywhere, is just always going to contribute to winning basketball. And he's just a guy that you want on your team. So if I was the Wizards, you lost, you lost Otto Porter Jr. I don't know if I would call that a loss. He's not been great for the Bulls. He's been fine, but he hasn't been playing for them very often. But, you kind of need that guy, especially Rui's not a great defender. Beal's not a great defender. Their defense has really suffered. So if you can't get a Kongwu, I would look at Devin Vassell, because I think that, he's a really talented guy that is just going to be good. And in this draft, that might be what you're hoping for, is just good. The other guy that is like him that I think people go back and forth on is Isaac Okoro. And Okoro is maybe a better individual defender one-on-one. He's stronger, NBA body, more athletic for sure. I think that we'll get to his shooting in a little bit. The rest of his game, he's a little bit more skilled and fluid. He's a good ball handler, but not a great one. He doesn't have like shake like LaMelo or anything. He's functional. He can make plays off the bounce a little bit. He can make plays at a pick and roll a little bit. Good passer, underrated passer. And like I said, really good defender. But my thing is, this dude's shot is atrocious. Like, it just is. It's an atrocious shot. We haven't really seen anything from him since. Like, he hasn't had, or at least I haven't seen, like, workout videos or anything like that showing that he's kind of fixed all of the issues with his shot. He's not confident in shooting that shot a lot.
But how's this fit? How's this fit looking?
I think he's probably got pretty good drip. I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm guessing.
He just went up 2 spots.
But, like, the thing is, everybody compares him that he could be like Andre Iguodala. He could be Jimmy Butler because he shares a little bit of, similarities with them. My thing is that he could just as easily be like Justice Winslow or Stanley Johnson if that shot doesn't come, because for all the things that he's skilled at, the off the bounce, playmaking, the pick and roll playmaking, all of that stuff. Like, if he's not knocking shots down, that stuff doesn't matter, because in the NBA, he is not going to be bigger, stronger, faster than the player he goes up against every night. And all NBA teams are going to do, they're going to go, okay, beat me. We're going to leave you open. Make the threes. And I don't know how long it's going to take for him to do that. As we mentioned with guys like Justice Winslow and Stanley Johnson, it could never happen. It could either take a lot of time or it could never happen. So you have to be like really, really confident that your team could figure out how to make his shot better. And that's a tough thing to be confident in. You know what I mean? Like, if it's as simple as he won't be able to make plays out of the pick and roll if every team goes under. He's not going to be able to. He's going to be like a transition guy who's athletic and makes his money, off back cuts and stuff. And he'll be a good player, but how high are you taking him? I know people have him as high as 2 on their big boards. Guys that think he should go that high. And at that high, you better fix that jumper. Because if you don't, it's not, the expectations are too high. Expectations in this draft are big. Because if you have realistic expectations for a lot of these players, you might not be disappointed. You might be able to put them in a role. Like if he goes to San Antonio, I'm all in. All in. They got the best shooting coach in the world, Chip England. He could develop under a great coaching staff. I'm all in, and he's going in at the 11th spot.
I can tell you. I mean, one thing I'm looking for is I hate banking on guys that are going to get the shot, because the amount of guys who actually get the shot versus who has it from the beginning, it's so hard to bank on the ceiling of a shot. It's so rare that it develops well.
Oh, it's so hard, and there's no guarantee. I mean, it's
so easy to talk yourself into it. But like, this guy just gets a jumper and grows 6 inches and puts on 40 pounds. We got LeBron in our hands. Like, it's so hard to bank on that. I really hate gambling on ceilings like that.
It's hard, man. It's really hard to gamble on that ceiling, and he's got a high one if he could figure it out. But again, like, he's got to start out hitting spot up catch and shoot shots when he's open. The off the dribble stuff is so far away. I don't know. You got to be patient. We saw a guy last year, Jarrett Culver. Here's a guy who led Texas Tech to the NCAA championship game. He's a guy that, had a lot of the same similarities. Good playmaker, good off the bounce, shaky jump shot. He went to Minnesota. Minnesota traded up to 6 to draft him last year, and he sucked. Like, he showed promise defensively, like everybody knew he would. But I think if Minnesota could do it again, they'd draft somebody else. You draft these guys too high, you put too high expectations on them, what they could be, and it's just, you're going to be disappointed, and you could write people off quick now. It's like NBA teams used to try to like develop their rookies, and even if they sucked, they would try to develop them a little bit into the end of the rookie contract. Teams will cut bait with you now. They'll replace you. They'll draft your replacement quick. You have to show something. And he's a guy, Okoro is a guy that, while he has that sky-high ceiling, if he could figure out the jumper, it's not guaranteed by any stretch. Let's talk about kind of like the end of the draft guys, maybe some sleepers and whatnot, guys that I like. I really think that there's a lot of good guards at the end of the draft that you're either going to see go in the 20s, or they're going to drop down into the second round. And it's all older guys. But in this draft, I think a lot of those older guys are just going to be better than some of the other younger, high potential guys that, we love to fall in love with because, highlights are awesome.
So when the Knicks don't trade 23, who we getting?
They got a lot of options. I mean, this draft is so weird because a number of them could be on the board. A number of them cannot be. I think a great guy for them to take would be Tyrell Terry from Stanford.
Sure.
He was great as a freshman at Stanford. His thing was he's 6'1", he's really slight of frame. And how is that going to translate? Well, pandemic, so he got to get in the gym and work on his body. He grew to 6'3".
I saw this.
This dude got so much more athletic. Like, I don't like to take too much from workout videos.
Sold. I'll take 2. I feel like it's during the Knicks therapy. Like, it all started against the Pacers, and Patrick Ewing missed a free throw. Like, I feel like I'm about to just
look. I don't like to fall in love with workout videos, but my dude Tyrell Terry is throwing dunks between the legs down. Like, he's cocking dunks back. He has hang time. He's gotten noticeably more athletic. And it's not like he was a bad finisher in college. He finished like 60% at the rim. And it's because he does have that touch that Killian Hayes doesn't. Like, how
great would be, this is the perfect draft for a player to completely like Photoshop himself, get him 5 space further up in the draft because of no one could actually go work with him in the gym, and just based off the Instagram videos alone, you could absolutely finagle some shit like that.
100%.
A couple extra million like that.
There's no doubt. I think
Tyrell Terry's gonna come into camp and be like 6'1" still. Like what?
just some video magic. They hired
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, incredible. Like yeah, no, he dunks from the 3-point line now.
Yeah, I mean, if this will be the best like movie studio magic that if I've seen, if he's not noticeably more athletic in the NBA, but he just looks it, and you look at the skills that he had, and you add the athleticism, the height. He's a guy that I had him 13th on my board, but like, you know, there's a lot of people that think that he could be there available in the 20s. So if he's there for the Knicks, I mean, you talk about shooting. He shot 90% of the free throw line, 42% as a freshman from three, can get to his shot really anywhere. Again, he gets to the rim because you have to close out hard, play him tight. So he's a guy at 23 I would really look at. Let me try. Yeah. So here's some other options too. You got Terry, you got Malachi Flynn, and Peyton Pritchard. I think Peyton Pritchard is a guy that is being severely underrated just from a, you know, playing perspective. If he went in the first round, you know, in the 20s somewhere, I definitely wouldn't hate it. He's a guy that, you know, he's really shifty, good shooter off the bounce, good playmaker, like obviously played in a lot of big games at Oregon. Love him a lot. But Malachi Flynn is my dude when we're comparing both of them. Malachi Flynn, I have 15th on my board. So, you know, if you want to make the argument for him over Tyrell Terry, I buy it. Tyrell Terry is just a little bit younger than him, so I do give him the edge in that regard. But Malachi Flynn is there. He just doesn't really have any weaknesses. His weakness is that he's 6'1" and he doesn't have a long wingspan. That's his weakness. But he won Defensive Player of the Year in the Mountain West Conference. He was unbelievable in the pick and roll, can make almost any pass in the book, shoot it off the bounce, get to it, scores at all three levels. I mean, I love the guy. I think that he's going to go way, way too far in this draft when he should be a guy that is taken somewhere, you know, at the early post lottery. So for me, it's Terry, Flynn, Pritchard in that order from those guys. I think I saw somebody in the chat mention Cassius Winston, and yeah, Cassius Winston is a sleeper for sure. Agreed. He's another point guard option. He's a guy that I thought the Knicks should have originally looked at 28 or with their second round pick. I'm hoping that he falls to 44 and the Bulls get him. He's probably one of the top three passers in the draft. Again, he's 6'1", but he played at Michigan State winning basketball, and he was the biggest reason on those teams that they were winning. I mean, he's one of the best shooters in the draft, one of the best passers in the draft. He's everything that you look for in a point guard. You know, except for the fact that he's a little small and maybe he's going to have trouble defending, I guess. But like, I think he'll be crafty. I think he'll be good enough at it that his offensive value, you know, makes it worthwhile. He's a guy that I don't know. Maybe I read it wrong. You know, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But apparently he had a 6'6" wingspan. So if that's the case, you know, he should be able to defend definitely point guards. And if he could, you know, defend twos on switches and stuff, you know, that definitely boosts his chances a little bit. Do you think Bane will be there at 23? You know, it's interesting. I think that'll all depend on what Philly does and what Brooklyn does. Obviously, Philly made the trade for Danny Green, so they got a little bit of shooting there. But obviously, Daryl Morey's going to love shooting. Desmond Bane is one of the best movement shooters in the draft. So I think Philly would look at him. I think since, you know, he's a little older, he's a little more ready to go. I think if I'm Brooklyn, given all of their, you know, the players and how ready to go they are in winning, I think they'll be a team that looks at Desmond Bane, especially if, you know, they're looking, like, if they can't sign Joe Harris to a reasonable contract, like, he could be a little bit of insurance. I mean, obviously he's not going to be able to come in and be Joe Harris right away, but he's a guy that could possibly do that. I think he'd be a good fit with Dallas, with Luke playing off Luka. So I think those are the spots. If Bane were to go in the first round, I think those would be the spots that I'd look at, and that range starting with Dallas at 18. And you could see him going anywhere. You could see him going to the Heat. You could see him going to Philly, and then you could even see him going to Denver. So I don't know if he'll be there at 23. There's a chance. but there's also a chance that those teams right above all go for a guy that could help them win now. So, yeah, I don't know. It depends how you feel about Bane. Personally, I like Bane, but I'm not nearly as big a fan as a lot of other players are. I know he's a good playmaker, but I don't think he's going to really be a playmaker at the NBA level. His handle is really weak. He can't really take more than a couple of dribbles, especially when he's trying to create offense for himself. I don't think he's going to be able to create offense on his own. He's kind of like post-prime Eric Gordon for me. So post-prime Eric Gordon, good player to have, right? It's not somebody that you wouldn't want on your team, but also isn't really like moving the needle a ton. And that to me is like kind of his best case scenario. I guess we should talk about Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony, popular dude,
Right.
dropped a ton. Supposed to be a top 3 pick, potentially the number 1 pick in the draft.
And what do you think was the big causes for the drop that go as low as it has?
He just wasn't very good at North Carolina. A lot of that wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say a lot, but it wasn't necessarily his fault. He got hurt. So you come back from injury, you're not going to play up to your potential all the time. The North Carolina was terrible. He had no spacing to work with. So anytime he would get into the paint, it was a packed paint. So obviously your finishing is going to be a little off when you're trying to finish among 10 different people. But I think he's a good shooter, but I don't think he's a great shooter. And I think that he's a guy that like probably thinks that he could be like Damian Lillard. I don't know him at all. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has a chip on his shoulder, but he's been humbled a little bit from all of the dropping that he's done on like draft boards and whatever. But for me, like the thing, and I don't know if teams feel the same way I do, and that's why he's dropping. I think that he is good enough to be a good player in the league to where like if like he could be Lou Williams, the guy who comes off the bench, gets buckets, and make a little bit of plays. I think he's a better playmaker than people think he was because nobody could hit shots at North Carolina. But if he could be Lou Williams, I think he's got a serious role in the league. But I don't know, like it's not a guarantee that he'll be happy being Lou Williams. So what if he's not happy being Lou Williams? Like, what are you getting?
Yeah, that can, that kills the pick for sure.
He's going to try to do too much. He's going to get, a little bit too upset if he's not made the focal point. I don't know, like that. These are things that could happen. I think that's what teams think is going to be the case with him. But he's a wild card. We'll see. He could very easily outplay his draft stock because he's certainly talented enough to. And again, it wouldn't shock me to see him be a guy that is taken right at the post lottery, where a team's just like, look, we're not in love with any of these other guys. Cole Anthony has the pedigree. He was awesome in AAU, awesome in high school. Maybe he was in a bad situation. Let's just take the talent.
Yeah, it's easy to sell yourself into that idea for sure.
So I could see it. I've heard some buzz that he could fall to the second round, and I just can't see that. There's no way. There's no way. All right. So I think the last thing that we'll talk about before we get out of here is kind of let's cross our fingers, hope and pray, and talk about the potential guys. And that's one, Alexei Pokusevsky, and Jaden McDaniels. I think those are the two crazy potential guys that their ceiling might be really high, but we don't know, right? Poku, I think people like a lot more. 7 foot, played in the same league as Giannis did. Really interesting player from a skill set perspective because he could shoot it like off movement and stuff, like coming off like floppy action off screens like a guard at 7 foot, and it's like really smooth looking. It didn't go in a ton, but it's smooth enough that you just look at the form and not necessarily the percentages, and that like with work, there's nothing stopping him from being a good shooter. He could shoot it off the bounce a little bit. Like he'd do really interesting things. He's like a legitimately good passer at 7'1" who can like initiate out of the pick and roll, like a point guard, So like That's really interesting. But he played in the same league as Giannis. So a lot of his tape, like in the games that I watched, like a lot of the things that you're impressed by is him getting a rebound over guys that look like they would play in our men's league, and taking it coast to coast and just like running, like when a team that is way more talented than our men's league team, they just get a rebound and run out in transition and just destroy us like that. Like he was doing a lot of that. So it's hard to judge that and that was what was hard with Giannis, right? Like Giannis was a guy that you couldn't figure out. He was doing a lot of the same things, but Giannis grew to be 7'1" and like brolic. Like you don't know how the handles are going to develop, or the physical capabilities of Poku are going to develop in the same way. And if they don't, and he's just this scrawny dude, like you don't know how that's going to translate. Two, the thing that worries me is he's not really aggressive. He doesn't attack the rim hard. He doesn't like contact. And again, I don't want to exaggerate this. The teams he was playing against literally looks like teams we would play in a men's league. So if he can't get to the free throw line against those kind of guys and he doesn't like contact against them, what on earth is he going to do versus Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid and guys like that in the paint? And like he's never going to get like it's hard to me if he was aggressive and getting to the free throw line, I would be way higher on his potential because of his skill set. But if he's just going to be a 7'2" guy who jacks up a bunch of threes and maybe could play make a little bit, like I don't know how high you want to take that guy, especially if he'll block shots probably, but he's not going to be a lockdown defender, I don't think, especially if he doesn't like really get his body up to par. So I don't know. But how high would you take a guy like I described? I don't know if you've watched any of the Poku stuff.
Sure didn't. I mean, you're gambling, but it's one of these things where if you don't love any of the guys on there, and Giannis was 15, and Giannis, turned into what he is, I can see a team talking themselves into it. Where in the situation where it's like they, with Giannis was taking a 15, and there was no before Giannis to talk yourself into it. Now you have an example that Giannis was 15. You could talk yourself into that circumstance. Well, he might not be Giannis, but he can be close to it. And like it makes sense for one of these later draft pick teams to really give it a shot. From 26. Yeah, you talk yourself into it easily in that regard for sure.
Yeah. That's the thing. He could be talked into.
I can tell you right now, I'd rather take a shot at him than a 6'1" point guard, my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the argument. That's the argument that you take with him. Like if he turns out to be a guy that you develop, like the Nuggets love taking these guys.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's got he's Serbian, so he's got the he's
gonna go to the Spurs in the second round, and everyone's like, "Fuck."
Yeah, I mean the Spurs would love him. I don't know if the Spurs have a second rounder. So that would be hard, but they could buy one.
Sure.
But a team like the Celtics, they got 3 picks. Like if you're the Celtics, why not, right?
Yeah, I mean the problem with the Celtics, they just don't need guys. But yeah, if it happens in that regard, the Spurs could probably buy one of their picks.
I don't think the Celtics are going to end up with 3 picks. I think they're going to package it.
They just can't.
The other guy is Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels is another guy that was like Cole Anthony, who came in like top 5, top 10 pick at the beginning of the year and just didn't play that well. There are questions about, how much does he love the game? This, the same kind of weird things he had with Anthony Edwards, except Anthony Edwards was at least productive. Jaden McDaniels, Washington really underperformed. They got 2 guys that are probably going to go in the first round on the team. They couldn't really win. But he is a guy that like has a lot of really legitimate skills, kind of like Pokashevsky does. 6'10", long, can shoot it off the bounce, good looking shot, underrated passer, and has a lot of defensive potential. I think he's going to be a really good defender in the league. So he's another guy that like I could see him going in at pick 17. I could see him going at pick 40, depending on how teams feel about him. But there is a Jonathan Isaac type player in him, so again, you said, like, why would I take one of these? Why would I take Trey Jones at point guard out of Duke when I could take a shot at these guys? It all depends on where you're at in your, I guess, quest for a championship at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like those guys have a better chance of contributing to your team. 6'1" guard, some version of that. You can find that basically anywhere. I mean, and what's the ceiling with that?
Yeah,
I'd rather ride the ceiling out. You're basically gambling on ceiling with these late first, early second round guys. So, I'd rather gamble on someone who's 7 foot and could possibly contribute to my team for the future rather than a 6'1" guard that you're basically begging to be a bench guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole thing with that. Let's see. Do we have any breaking news? I just saw somebody post something about Shams. Klay Thompson suffered an apparent lower leg injury today and is undergoing tests to determine the severity.
I saw something before. I don't know how true it is, but Bogdanovic's trade might not be finalized.
Yeah, I saw something like that too, but I couldn't really get.
I mean, it just seems like he didn't. Apparently, it was some version of a sign and trade, and he just never agreed to the signing.
Oh, that's nice. Just put it out there and hope that he goes along with it, right?
Yeah,
it's a good strategy.
Right.
All right. What did we miss anything?
That's all I got. I mean, good luck to everyone's teams tonight. Hopefully, get the player you want. Let's go Knicks. Let's start turning the ship around. I think tonight's going to be a really, really fun night. It's going to be crazy. It's got to be one of the most insane drafts that with the weirdest potential players ever. Good job, Corey, by spending the last 6 years of his life doing nothing but watching high school footage of weird teams in Europe.
You're welcome.
Do you think that you're going to run out of time for the next one? Because you had 6 years to prepare for this one, and now you have like 6 months for the next one.
Yeah.
Does that concern you at all?
It's going to be different, but I feel like I'm able to work quicker now than I was at the start of the process.
What I'm excited for is the one time that you actually get to do this where there's going to be a March Madness.
I hope so, man.
I hope so too. I mean, fingers crossed, for March Madness this year. I don't think it's looking great, but fingers crossed for it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. The one thing that I'll plug a couple of things before we go. First thing is, I released a draft magazine called the Hardwood, which I didn't think would sell out, or I would have ordered more copies, but it sold out. So you can't get the physical copy. I'm sorry, but you can get the PDF version. If you go to my Twitter or if you go to hardwoodherald.com, you can find the link on Twitter. It's on my pinned tweet. You just go in. You can find the Gumroad website. If you go to hardwoodherald.com, click on the magazine link that you'll see. I tried giving the PDF version away for free today, but the website literally did not allow it. So I marked it down to the lowest possible amount, which is $1. So you can buy the PDF version for $1. It's got my entire big board with write-ups. It has articles on the draft from a ton of different writers. It has interviews with Rashad Phillips, Knicks fan, CP from Knicks Fan TV. It has early predictions from guys like Spencer Perlman and John Macri, myself, Larry, some other guy. Like, there's a ton of stuff in there. Again, it's $1. I tried giving it away for free. I literally couldn't. I'm sorry. The other thing is I will be going live on Knicks Fan TV. I'll be part of his panel with a bunch of other great guests that I'm excited about. That, I believe, starts at 7:45 over on the Knicks Fan TV channel. So if you want to continue Knicks-related / just draft-related viewing, definitely go over there, head over there at 7:45 Eastern Standard Time, and come be a part of the chat and the channel over there. And yeah, we did it. I'm excited to almost be done. Once I'm done with the post-draft stuff, I'll be done with this draft. I can move on to watching even more Cade Cunningham.
Shout out to DDDIOP for saying that you look like Vooch in that Magic jersey. That's really funny. Go check out the PDF. It's $1. Don't be cheap. Corey, I promise you, nobody put more time into preparing for this draft out of anybody, anywhere, any company, or anything like that than Corey did. He literally lived this draft for the last 18 months. It's absolutely insane the amount of time and effort he put into it. Great job by him. It's $1. Go pick it up.
Yeah. Again, I tried doing it for free. Literally wouldn't let me. But yeah, guys, thank you for coming in. This chat was amazing today. You guys were on fire.
Yeah, we'll be doing more of these. Let's do this.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a great time. Maybe we'll do a post-draft stream for ourselves on the YouTube. So make sure to keep aware of the channel. Thank you for everybody who found me a million years ago on the channel following the draft. For guys that, if you found me yesterday, if you found me today, appreciate you stopping by, supporting us. Larry and I have been doing, especially when the NBA season starts, we're going to not just be doing draft stuff. We had an NBA show that we were doing.
Let's do a free agency one, man.
We're going to do free agency. That's going to be Friday. There's so much stuff to talk about. So make sure you stay locked in. Follow us. You can find that on all the social platforms and whatnot. Head there. Stay in touch. Hit us up with any thoughts, messages, add us, whatever you want to do. We will hit you back, I promise. And we'll see you guys next